Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. My guest today is Leila Mansouri, who's an American Iranian attorney, activist, and diaspora community leader. And together with Leila today, we'll talk about the current revolts in Iran. Thank you for your time, Leila. Thanks for joining me today. Would you like to tell my viewers something about who you are and your background?
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, as you said, I am an Iranian-American attorney and a community leader I have been organizing events and projects in the Iranian-American and British Iranian community for about 12 years, all volunteer. And now we're all coming together in the diaspora to amplify the voices of people inside Iran, and we're trying our best to help them so that they can achieve their fundamental human rights.
Let's start talking about, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting
I'm sorry.
you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're very inspired. This revolution has been started and is being led by women, and they're very brave. You're seeing unarmed teenagers in the street facing government forces that have weapons of war. So the least we can do is amplify their voices. And so I'm very grateful to you for using your platform to help raise awareness about what's going on there.
Yes, absolutely. This is why we're covering this subject today. And let's start talking about how these revolts started. So what happened is that the religious police arrested a girl who allegedly was not wearing her hijab properly. So just to start, can you explain us what the religious police or moral police is and what their role in the society is?
Sure. Yeah, so I myself has actually been stopped by the morality police as well several times on trips to Iran when I went to visit relatives. Basically, they're called the morality police, and they have several functions. Like, it's not just against women, even men have a dress code. You know, if they're seen as wearing Western clothes, they kind of stop them, they fine them. Women, if their scarf is loose and too much hair is showing, um, they will stop you and harass you. A lot of times they stand in the entrance to shopping malls and they check, you know, if you're going somewhere with your boyfriend or girlfriend, which is illegal because Iran has Sharia law, Islamic law. You're not allowed to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, so that you can get in trouble for just holding your boyfriend's hand and walking in the street. They even will catch you if you have a dog. You're not allowed to have a dog. They'll fine you. They'll take your dog away. Like in my case, I was walking in the mall once, and my hair was coming out of my headscarf, and these people came up to me and they said, "Fix your hijab." And I guess I was one of the lucky ones because sometimes if they want, they'll take you away and they'll try to put you into this education center, and they'll require your parents to come and sign the title of their home sometimes to promise that you won't be out of your dress code again. So these are the kinds of things people are dealing with. When I used to travel to Iran with my father, if we were going somewhere, we would have to take our passports and birth certificates out with us, because if they caught us, they would ask, what is our relationship? You're not allowed to travel. You're not allowed to be a woman and man are not allowed to be seen unless they have an Islamic okay relationship. So like your father or your child or like your uncle, you know, so we would have to prove our relationship. Otherwise we would get harassed. When you enter the airports in Iran are segregated. The entrances are men and women. So women, when they enter the airport, they check your dress code. Even if you're wearing nail polish, they can harass you. I was wearing a coat, I remember, and I almost missed my flight. My coat was down to my knees and they just were bothering me. They said, your coat is too short. They wouldn't let me into the airport. My cousin was wearing nail polish and they made her sign a declaration that she wouldn't do it again. And they fined her. So these are the kinds of functions of the morality police. I know it sounds really crazy. And these are the just basic things that we take for granted every day in other countries.
Yes, it definitely sounds scary. So now the police are reacting to revolts with an incredible level of violence. Was that expected, in your opinion, by the government, by the police?
Yes, and it's happened before. It's only now that the world is more aware of it. But in November 2019, there was also an uprising, and the government of Iran shut the internet down for over a week, complete internet blackout. and they were committing atrocities there. We know for a fact that over 1,500 people were killed. Thousands were, Amnesty International estimated over 10,000 people were arrested, political prisoners. So that was just the most recent uprising. We've had uprisings many times over the last few decades, but this is the first time that the voices have really been amplified. And I think it's because the Iranian diaspora is so strong now. There's over 6 million Iranians that are in exile. And they're, most of them, the majority of them are highly educated and working in all kinds of parts of society. And everyone is now working together in a unified effort to really bring awareness, and people are fed up. It's time. The majority of Iranians want a change. They want regime change. This is a revolution. I would say maybe 10% of Iran supports the current regime, but the majority want a change.
Well, you touched the point, and I would like you to elaborate on it. The government is cutting down internet connections right now, too. So I was wondering, how come they are so scared by freedom of information, and how aware are the people of Iran about ways to work around that, such as the Tor browser or VPNs or anything of the sort?
So everyone in Iran, even elements of the regime, use VPNs to get on websites. Almost every website is filtered, so you need a VPN. The funny thing is, though, that the government sells the VPNs that work. So they profit off of their own censorship. But we have also elements outside that are providing VPNs. We have people that are creating VPNs for their families back home. But if you want to just go on, first of all, if you want to visit like Facebook or Twitter, you need to get a VPN. But even random websites like shopping websites are filtered. You need a VPN, and it adds up cost-wise. But of course, they're threatened because people use the internet and they use WhatsApp to mobilize. And right now, WhatsApp has been barely working for the last month. I know that I can barely reach my family inside Iran. Some cities are worse than others. So it's a big mountain to climb to get access right now, to get connected.
What is the role
something else?
Sorry.
Another quick thing is, I wanted to say the majority of Iranians know what's going on in the world because they have satellite dishes. And in the 90s and early 2000s, the government would do crackdowns and come and remove all the satellite dishes from the roofs of houses. But now it's just beyond, they can't do it anymore because everyone has a satellite, and they watch all of these news channels, these exiled news channels that are broadcast mainly from the UK. So that's why people also have a taste of what's going on. They have a taste, and they see the corruption, and they see family members of regime officials living abroad. Their children are living luxury lives, and a lot of them are in California or in London, and they're not even adhering to Islamic dress code, yet they're forcing the Islamic dress code and the religion on people there in Iran.
I think that the other side of the coin here is that actually the government pushes the information they want people to consume. So what is the role of government-backed propaganda here in these revolts and in trying to influence people's minds?
So the government has always used similar talking points. And by the way, I hate calling them a government because they're kind of a fascist mafia. They're not really a government. Nobody has elected them. Nobody accepts them. How can I say? Can you repeat the question so I can?
Yeah, sure. The question is, of course, they are pushing the information that they want people to read or to hear. So what's the role of like misinformation in these events?
So if you watch Iranian state TV, which is what's approved, you will see a lot of the same talking points over and over again. They will say, this is the West is to blame. The West, they're attempting, the media is manipulating the protests. These are not really protests. They're just hooligans that are vandalizing property. And they'll blame it on Israel and the United States, and they'll say they're trying to come and do a coup and take over. So those are the same kinds of things over and over. And I actually had a debate with someone inside the regime a few weeks ago on TRT on that channel, and she was using the same talking points. And I said, there are no outside powers helping us. I mean, we wish there were. We are working really hard to get heard in like the US, for example. And only now, after over 4 weeks, did we finally get a statement from Michelle Obama, for example. So there are no outside powers. It's just Iranians outside who are doing their best. I have an Iranian passport, for example. So how am I an outside power? Uh, I'm not allowed to travel to Iran with my American passport. When I enter Iranian soil, I'm considered Iranian, and I enter with an Iranian passport, just like all the other billions of people outside. So it's us. We're the ones that are influencing the media. There are no other powers, but the government keeps at that with their regime backed state media. But most people don't watch that anyway. The majority don't watch that.
You said that like 10% of the population is in favor of the oppression by the regime. You don't want to say government, so let's call it a regime. How come like 10% of the population is in favor of an oppression?
I would say 10 to 20% maximum. And those are people who are very religious. They believe in the ideology of the revolution. A lot of most those people have never left the country. They live in a bubble. They live in this religious bubble, and they genuinely think that either they think that outside powers are going to come and I don't know, take over, or they're benefiting from the corruption of this regime. So why would they want to change? Because they're living lavishly because of the corruption. It's a very much insider. You're either with us or you're not. And so if you're with them, you'll get the government contracts. You know, you can't have a huge factory in Iran without paying bribes to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So a lot of times people support them just because they don't want to give up the lifestyle that they have. So it's either super religious people, which are not that many, or it's people benefiting from the corruption, kind of like the oligarchs, the Russian oligarchs.
Of course. Well, this revolt started because wearing a hijab is considered a way of gender oppression. Is that the common thought about Iranian women? I mean, of course, I agree with that, but is that the common thought? Okay.
Yes, yeah. And even in 1979, when the Islamic Revolution happened, hundreds of thousands of women protested. They did not want to wear the hijab. So they have been constantly pushing back on this ever since the revolution happened. Yeah, so the regime commits gender apartheid. Women don't have the same rights as men. They call it Islamic laws. I'm not an Islamic scholar, so you could ask 10 Islamic scholars and they'll all give you different answers on if the hijab is required in Islam or not. But there are other things that women don't have a right to a divorce. They don't, unless there's extreme circumstances. They're not allowed to travel outside the country without their husband or father's permission. So it's very much gender apartheid over there. Women are not allowed in the stadiums to watch men's football matches. Women are not allowed to sing unless they're singing in a chorus where the voice of one woman is illegal. So those, just to give you an example of how how the apartheid works.
Well, you touched the point I would like you to elaborate on. Is wearing the hijab required by Islam or isn't it? Because there are a lot of Arab countries where women don't have to cover their heads.
Exactly. And even Turkey is a Muslim country and they're not required to cover. So it's up for debate. It depends on who you ask. But I think the majority of Muslims will agree that there's nowhere in the Quran that says that you can kill someone for not adhering to Islamic standards, and B, that you can force someone to wear the hijab. I think it's all up for interpretation. I don't think it's a requirement, but it's just like any religion, it's all up for who's interpreting it and how they're interpreting it. So I know that's a bit of a short answer. Like, we can talk about this for days, right?
No, but it's a quick answer because it is what it is. I mean, it's up to debate where it's mandatory or it isn't. Therefore, it's a correct answer. Generally speaking, how would you describe the condition of women in Iran if compared to other oppressive countries, such as Afghanistan is the first one that comes to my mind?
So the situation of women in Iran is far better than Afghanistan, of course, because, well, now that the Taliban has taken over, the women were doing pretty well before the US pulled out last year. In Iran, women are highly educated. They still are allowed to attend school. They're allowed to drive. They're allowed to kind of be in parliament, some parliament positions, but only the ones that support the regime for the parliament. As far as school goes, I mean, you know, for example, Saudi Arabia just gave women the right to drive recently. Women have always been able to drive in Iran. And they do enjoy those kinds of freedoms, but they don't have I guess it depends on which countries you're comparing it to. Of course, if you're comparing it to Afghanistan, Iran's like a dream. But if you're comparing it to maybe Turkey, we have a long way to go.
Okay, I understand. But we see on the internet images of Iran in the 70s, and it looked like a very modern country, a rich country, like it would compare it with the West. And what happened next? How could the country plunge back centuries in such a short time?
I think this Islamic fundamentalism kind of swept through the Middle East. If you look at pictures of also Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, women, I mean, the Middle East was far more modern then. I think that Ayatollah Khomeini, no one took him seriously because he was so far out there that even clerics were like, this guy will never get in power. So he was exiled for a long time in Iraq, and then he was exiled in France. And people didn't take him seriously. And then they didn't and then and then he started saying some things that people wanted to hear as far as economy goes, like, you know, we want to improve the middle class in Iran and nationalize the oil and those kinds of things people wanted to hear. And he essentially tricked the Iranian population. Not everyone, but the reason why a lot of Iranians are resenting the West is because France and England and America kind of helped him to come to Iran. And so it's a couple of factors. So that's also, I mean, there have been so many books written about this. I really recommend the book The Black Wave by Kim Gaddis. She really does a good job of explaining how this fundamentalism just suddenly came and people were tricked. And there was no social media then, you know, so people didn't have the opportunity to independently investigate and things like that.
What can be the outcome of these revolts? Like, can this be the Arab Spring of Iran, also expanding to nearby countries?
Yeah, this is the beginning of the end of the regime. There's no going back. Iranians kind of had a little mini spring already in 2009. I don't know if you remember, there was the Green Movement.
Yeah, I do.
And the reason that one probably didn't work as well is because there were forces in Washington that were lobbying for reform in Iran. And so President Obama didn't help back then. And also, there wasn't the infrastructure as to help either, as far as helping Iranians get internet. But those forces, those lobbying forces, have now realized that this regime cannot be reformed. There used to be this notion that the only way to avoid war in Iran is to support the elements within the regime that do want reform, because the regime is fractured within itself. But every time they've tried, they've gotten pushed down by the supreme leader. So this is why the diaspora has now finally united, and they have realized that you can't reform these ayatollahs. There's got to be a complete regime change. There's got to be free elections, a referendum, and let people decide from within who they want to be their leaders and how they want to govern themselves.
Well, this can also change the international landscape because Iran is not in good terms with the West. Like at the moment, they are supplying drones to Russia, and they are also giving shelter to internet hackers who recently attacked Albania. So what do you think, Iran, how can Iran change in the international landscape in the future years?
Well, I think once Iran becomes democratic and it will be a superpower, probably. I mean, it's got a highly educated population. There is a massive brain drain of people leaving, but Iranians abroad will pour so much money into the country. They'll come back, they'll do business. It'll be a place for tourism. Israel will no longer be threatened by the existence of the Islamic Republic. It'll trickle down to Afghanistan. I think it'll help in eradicating the Taliban. It's going to help neighboring countries. And then I really think sometimes, there's a conspiracy where Iranians like to say that they don't want Iran to be strong. They want to keep Iran weak. I don't know if that's true or not, but I can tell you that Iran will be a very strong and very flourishing country if it's allowed to open up and be democratic. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And I also hope that you're right. And we also hope the best for Iran as a country and for Iranian women in particular. It does. Well, Leila, many thanks for your time. I think that your explanation were very good, precise, and complete. So I think this helps spread the sentiment, the feeling about Iranian revolts, which is a very important event of these days. Thanks everybody else for watching this. Sorry, say it again.
If anyone wants to find me, I'm easy to reach. You can find me on social media, you can link my handle below. Please feel free to email me or drop me a note if you have any questions.
I will absolutely do that. Okay, I will link all your social media in the description of this video when I publish it. Thanks everybody for watching this, and see you all next time. Bye-bye.
And can I just say something?
Sure, go ahead.
Zan, Zendegi, Azadi. It means woman, life, freedom. And behind me, the background is the Freedom Tower in Tehran, and we are on our way to freedom.
I hope so. I hope so. Thanks again, Leila. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.